Next up, we have a panel, the first panel of the day, New Standards for DAOs, with a group of awesome people from around the ecosystems. Yeah, let's just get it started. Let's get NiMA in here and say hello to everybody.
Hello, hello.
Awesome.
East
All right,
Nation.
y'all take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Hudson. Interesting that Jay was talking about DAOs from the perspective of communities. So you could say you can have like social collaboration between DAOs. You could even look at DAOs as formalization of communities. But in this panel with our lovely DAO guests, we're going to talk about the technical side. So thanks to Jay. And now, hello, everyone. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit, but also tell us why you care about DAO standards?
Sure, I'll go jump in real quick. My name is James Young, CEO of Abridged, and we have a consumer product called Collabland. I was fascinated with DAOs since the 2016, the DAO hack. That really is what compelled and still going down that rabbit hole of reducing coordination costs. And this is what the internet and DAOs can provide just online. And the more I learn, the more I find out how little I know. So it just keeps this cycle going. But that's me.
Thanks, James. As always, great hair. So Illia, do you want to go next?
Yeah, hi everyone. Illia, co-founder at Near. And for me, kind of, there's like few levels of DAO. I think like the highest level, is a kind of original discussion about how people can self-organize in new ways and like share resources and build something and be aligned. Like that's, definitely an amazing work and amazing idea that like I think we're still all striving for to build. I think like the kind of more practical, like technical side of this, I think unlocks a lot of kind of on-chain like resources and stuff we do, like governance and like management of like, investment and stuff like this, like practical things that, we all have problems with for various reasons. And so it kind of solves this problem right now while we're still figuring out this kind of future, path of like, how do we build companies in the new world, right? So that's kind of combination for me.
Thank you. It's you, David.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So David Roon, CTO co-founder of OpenLaw. And I also been always into the DAO in 2016. I think that even before, already in 2015, like Vitalik was writing the article about it, and I found it fascinating. And so at OpenLaw, we were working like mainly on the legal layer of things and how like basically organization or a set of agreements between members of this organization. That's what led us to the work that we've been doing, the DAO, where we basically set DAOs for like a specific use case in terms of funding and even other services around that. And I think that by going really deep into these use cases and trying to understand what do we have in common between all of them and how we can generalize and standardize them, and how can we be flexible and dynamic and evolve as any organization evolve. Like it can be something at a certain point in time and then becomes something else. I mean, in the history of companies, we've seen that, like Nintendo was just doing some little games, Nokia was doing tires and other stuff. Like companies and organization evolved, and we need to have also a foundation so that it can evolve with it. And I find it fascinating to be able to play between the formalism of creating smart contracts and doing things on chain and the fuzziness of managing an organization and community, and how to marry these two and make them work together.
Yeah, and I think for the DAO and people who are dealing with legal DAOs, you have like these constraints from two sides. You have to formalize with respect to law, but also code. And then you also have humans and communities. By the way, myself, I'm also with Near on Twitter at Inside NiMA. That's me, and I'm focused on growing our ecosystem of communities. So to kind of start formally start the conversation, I think we should talk about why now is the right time to talk about DAO standardization and DAO standards and formalizing them. And I think one of the reasons is we're kind of growing to this direction of multi-chain, multi-DAO, multi-community universe. And now I think is a good time for DAOs to formalize how they're going to collaborate together, talk together, and even go as far as a DAO on even a centralized platform, God forbid, talking to a DAO on chain, and then talking to a slightly less centralized chain, and then a real decentralized chain. So it's like I think now is the right time to talk about this and start the conversation around it. And I think one of the coolest thing that happened at ETHDenver was we were having a conversation about how to formalize guilds and communities, and then I turn on like ETHDenver stream, and Vitalik was talking about like, this is how to come up with formalisms for memberships on chain. So maybe we could pick up where Vitalik left it and talk about like, how is that relevant for DAOs in the context of DAOs if the concept of membership is formalized? Does it change anything for DAOs or not? James seems to have. Do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. With Collabland, we have this token permission chat, and at the root of it is you need to hold a token in order to be in this chat, and that is kind of like this beginning of a membership, or I hesitate to say identity because that's a huge rabbit hole. And then you go to, mixing via like your platform username, because, we allow token holders to assemble and coordinate through Telegram and Discord, and the bot just controls. If you were to move those tokens out, the bot would just kick you out. It's very, very simple. It's not quite a DAO, but we're seeing use cases of people using like Snapshot, which is an off-chain voting tool, and Collabland to like formalize. And I think this notion of membership and this kind of standardization, I think will emerge regardless. So it's either going to be ad hoc, kind of like, if you are an Ethereum developer, ERC20 token standard just kind of emerged and people just started using it. Now it's like a standard. It may not, it's arguably not the best, and who knew it was going to be widely popular. We're seeing the same type of pattern happening now. So I think it's great to have this kind of conversation to get ahead of it, rather than like the market kind of dictating just what's available and everyone latching on. And so it's going to be this really interesting topic, because you'll have people that are kind of rooted in, I think, like the kind of core notions of cypherpunk, Bitcoin, pseudo anonymity, versus those that, don't really have those values and those. So, as we evolve the ecosystem in general, I think you'll see some contention there. And that's kind of the value system of the ecosystem that we have to address from a human culture value perspective. And I think that's going to drive a lot of conversation. So it's great that Vitalik is leading the charge there. And, it's going to be messaging top down, or like from, the thought leaders of the ecosystem, and then bottom up by the communities growing. And so trying to find that middle ground and where that is going to be. I don't know exactly, but I think it's going to have to do with some type of token address. And, this is why, being an Ethereum developer, I'm interested in NEAR. Just to give a quick plug, if you don't mind. There's this like implicit account and a kind of an account-based system that is not like a first-class citizen, let's say, in like other blockchains. So this is fascinating, and I think this is something to explore. Yeah, when you talk about account abstraction and membership and things like that from a technical perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Got it. Any direct responses to that?
I would say it's also always a question of like, how do you define memberships? Like you could imagine in certain organizations, especially as they grow, that you have certain levels. Like when you think about shares in a company, you have like voting shares, non-voting shares. I mean, even already in Model V2, you have this idea of shares and loot, where we have like non-voting members that have they have a say, like if they want to retweet, they can get some of the asset in the DAO, but they're not able to vote. So I think it will be also part of that. Like we will have to define what do we mean when we say membership, what kind of membership are we interested in, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think for me, kind of like when we're thinking about governance, more kind of high level, like we kind of end up in this understanding that there's like way too many stakeholders in the ecosystem. And as you know, as like we like work in like guilds, as there's more like projects launching, and then like this DeFi explosion, right, where kind of everybody wanted to have their own governance kind of for their platform. It's actually like I think this is like just like showcases the need where, you know, the complexity of interaction between all of these parties will just keep growing. And if there is no like clear quote unquote API for them to interact between each other, right? Like we're kind of going from individuals interacting on the internet, right, to projects like, you know, Balancer and whatever, and 1inch, for example, now interacting with each other. They are interacting through smart contracts, but at the same time, both of them now have a governance layer that can change, like, you know, a bunch of stuff about how these things work. Mm-hmm. And so like this governance, like this people kind of who are trying to make decisions, they need to find a way to interact with each other, but it is, you know, pseudonymous and like have a very different spectrum, and like same problem kind of in the governance, like in a higher level where you have like, you know, developers and validators and, you know, token holders and all those different parties, and like, you know, NFT creators and DAO builders, right? All of them have a somewhat different position on what should happen, and like how do you coordinate them while they like not, you know, not putting them into one, you know, voting thing, which, you know, we know fails. Like if you just put everyone and say like, here's one vote, everybody vote, it's like that doesn't work. So like how do you actually coordinate like the smaller groups together? And I mean, this is literally what like governance has been, like, you know, in political science, but like we are, you know, in this new world where code is law. So like how do we actually do that? So that's why I think it's like it's time to start defining this. As we just have this kind of explosion of like this governance tools and people starting to use governance to actually like control smart contract platforms, and like they need to communicate with each other on the governance layer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think it would be good to talk about like DAOs a little bit like chains, the same way that when two chains have a bridge and they interoperate, you want to know like what are the security guarantees, like how often does this chain get forked and all those things. You kind of need to know like what's the minimum viable like time that you need on the other side to react to forks and like governance events on the other chain. We should come up with standards for DAOs too. That, for example, I remember with Metacartel, there was no way initially to upgrade the DAO. So like everyone had to rage quit and then join the new DAO. So something like this should be formally defined. So if two DAOs have, I don't know, some kind of bond or collaboration or alliance, they know that, oh, like we will have like a 7 days notice period for this other DAO to get dissolved, and then like we have to return the assets and stuff. So I think that's probably one of the reasons why we do really need to formalize DAO standards. If no comments, I wanted to kind of move to some examples, because I feel this is still kind of abstract. Have you guys seen any actual examples of social collaboration between DAOs or alliances that you think could be formalized to kind of paint a more clear picture for everyone?
Yeah, I can jump in real quick. We're seeing this in the social token space where actual collabs are happening. And really what that means is there is just this like informal or formal swapping of tokens. And having and from a Collabland perspective, in a Discord, you'll have one token community allowing another token to be used to get access to a channel. So this is kind of the first kind of merging of kind of groups of holders. And so that is becoming a thing.
Could we say that's a little bit like the Star Alliance or something with like airlines, that if you have like a card from one of these like members of the alliance, you can enter all the other like what do they call it, premium lounge?
That's right. No, yeah, that's basically what it is in terms of like, what do you do when you have a token? You have protocol tokens that define some type of work to be done, some yield or whatever. Let's, for example, in DeFi. But in social tokens, it's like access to a community and a group, and whatever the values of that group are. So yeah, it's very similar to that. And we're seeing that happening more and more. I mean, in the Web 2 space, you're actually seeing, I think it's Stir. They, raised $4 million in October to help influencers collab on YouTube. And I think it was just yesterday, they announced a $100 million raise. So within 4.5, 5 months, they went from like seed to Series A, because there's demand there, like on the Web 2 space. So it's really like this collision between Web 2, creator economy, influencers that need to start collabing because they're getting demonetized from these different platforms. And then now you see them looking into crypto with the explosion interest, mainstream adoption, and they're just looking for another revenue stream. So I think we're just kind of at the tip of the iceberg, and I think this is, why we need to get ahead of this in terms of, standards for DAOs, because, once you have these tokenized communities, they're going to want to start voting and moving around funds. You need to be able to do that. Layer 1, layer 2, multi-chains, all of that, because people aren't voting right now because gas costs on ETH are too high. So, it costs $30 to vote. So if the aggregate cost of whatever funds you're moving for the vote, is not as much as the aggregate, if the gas cost of everyone voting, it's just like, it kind of doesn't really make sense to do this. And so this is why, again, we need to look for alternate solutions.
And like, I think I tweeted about this. Maybe we should do like hot takes at some point here. But I feel like going from Ethereum mainnet, which is obviously the most secure chain at the moment, and to these like other chains and layer 2s is not just like going from like a slow chain to a faster chain. It is, I feel, more like when everyone got access to broadband. It's just a complete game changer. That's really what I meant with game changer. People are going to do things that we cannot even imagine now, because when you have like 1 gigabit internet, that's more like Solana. Near is more like 100 megabit, but we have sharding. So when you have like 1 gigabit or 100 megabit internet, you can do like really insane stuff that were not even possible with like dial-up internet. And then another point that you made, I just want to make it more clear about interoperability and open standards, is that it's kind of insane that like when I joined crypto more formally a couple of years ago, it was all about like kind of my red pill was the fact that data, identity, all these things were open, and data portability is kind of like a jargon. And this is actually not possible. You even have like NFT platforms issuing NFTs with features that are not supported on other NFT platforms, which is kind of crazy. And then with like DAOs, like DAOs need to collab, like they're all about collaboration. Makes no sense. So I think that's why we're having this conversation now.
Yeah, I agree. And, it's an interesting thesis to see, is there like a deposit chain or a root chain that you can secure funds and read from in an atomic way, where you can actually do votes, potentially like faster transactions from a DAO perspective is just voting. And then having that go back into the main chain or root chain and sync depending on time, day, or whatever. So yeah, I think that, to your point, emergent design, people like use it and we will have no idea. And it would be hard to anticipate. It's impossible to look forward and go, okay, this is the use case, but it's going to make so much sense looking back. You're like, of course. And so we just need more of these experiments to happen so that we can see what works and what doesn't work. You need more times at bat for the success to emerge.
Yeah. I don't know if Illia and David, you have any comments, or we move to the next topic?
I mean, I think one of the examples that is emerging for sure is definitely like different, like this application DAOs, right? Kind of starting to be leveraged more for kind of business development, and like where either like individuals or other DAOs, I mean, or like other organizations can pretty much apply to like for this DAO to work with some other party, right? And I actually think this is really interesting because like if we imagine that each organization is, you know, operating as a DAO, then well, it's like almost they are, you know, requesting work or requesting some kind of collaboration from each other. And so that's kind of already happening through like some types of proposals and things like that. And like it's in like, you know, there's like funds allocated for the work to be integrated of, you know, this application with that application or with that chain or whatever. And so I think like going forward, kind of that type of thing where actually one DAO will be like requesting for some work to be done by another DAO, or like pretty much putting a bounty, and that some other DAO can come in, like Raid Guild, for example. Yeah, like Raid Guild can come in and, you know, do the work and get paid into their DAO and then distribute it to their like whatever token holders or something. I think like that kind of thing is like, it's almost happening. Like, yeah, I mean, the tooling is very janky. Right? Yeah, it's very not formalized. The tooling is very janky. I mean, one of the things is like formalization here, it becomes more and more complex because this is where like the social part comes in, right? Like actually you need to have a conversation about many of these things. Like it's really hard. So like we have this for Sputnik DAO, we have this like policy, and there's like 100 ideas how to extend like the policy of how people vote on things depending on some conditions. And like reality is it's kind of hard to formalize that in some piece of code because, well, everybody has like a different way of like what information they want to see or what they want to discuss and stuff like this. So I think like you still need a social layer there, like as part of this formalization. But yeah, I mean, I think like just few simple kind of APIs between how to establish connection, how to like send information, like where is kind of almost like a mailbox for each DAO from other DAOs, and like how it's going to be processed and prioritized. Like few of those things I think will go a long way, and then everything else can go on the social layer.
And I think us being crypto and open web, these things should not become like one size fits all. But DAOs and these communities, they should at least be able to subscribe to a set of standards and then broadcast that to other DAOs that we're working within this, like, I don't know, IEEE blah 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 standard for DAO collaboration, and then they know how to communicate and send signals. So we have like 7 minutes left. I wanted to kind of get into this more like hot takes, or like, let me start it with this. Like, are you guys more a fan of like big DAOs, like DAO kind of is a medium-sized kind of DAO, or Flamingo DAO for NFTs? But like, are you a fan of large-scale DAOs or lots of small DAOs, or kind of they would fit within this framework of DAO mesh from Zephram?
I think that you know, it depends on where you're coming from. If you're looking at, you know, just putting your organization online, then the structure of top-down, you know, trying to mimic a corporation can definitely be doable. And I think the first ideas of DAOs were rooted in that. But and that calls for like organizations to become like larger. I think that this network of DAOs where you can npm install DAO and they're more composable, and it's just DAOs all the way down. And so, you know, you may be networked with a bunch of different DAOs. So it's not like this top-down hierarchy of DAOs. Maybe that's some of it, but some of it may be flat, and you just mix and match kind of how you want. And I think because of the speed of being online, and it being driven by smart contracts, I think it could be a lot more fluid and dynamic. And so what we know of like organizations, and you need to kind of have to reset your mental model. And so this is what we're learning about. So I think the technology is there. As Illia said, it's just about the social coordination, how we're going to all like work together. But I see it from like a technical perspective, if we can all agree. And that's always the hard part. You know, I don't think that we're going to solve governance because it hasn't really been solved since the beginning of human history. So just thinking like, you know, crypto is going to help and like magically solve it, I think is not realistic, but it'll be a lot more fluid, and there'll be different things that will emerge, ephemeral organizations, if you will, that are not so structured and tied. So you might have a DAO that it lives for 2 weeks combined with another DAO that is more anchored. You know, there's a bunch of different combinations. And I think that the standards will help push forward this idea of organizational composability.
Love that. DAOish, another buzzword was like ephemeral DAOs. Hope we see more of those on these like Gen 2 chains. David and Illia, any hot takes on this?
So I think that's like coming from the legal side, and I'm not a lawyer, but being working with lawyers for a few years now, I think that when you think that an organization is really just a set of agreements and that governance is here, not only to make it legal, but also to like avoid conflicts, to make to streamline decision making and things like that. I think that DAO is a concept to do that, but the tools are like what we're building, the standardization and also the smart contracts, and having kind of automated way to take decision and make this in a certain way that basically the fact that we have our emotions and something that get in the way of taking a good decision suddenly can be removed, and having almost the organization working on the protocol level as opposed to on the human level, I think can make things much more fluid, like James was saying. And I think that another thing that is, for me, very interesting in standardizing the DAO, and as James was saying, having this composability, is that suddenly you can scale good governance in a way that is not possible today. Like today, if even if someone had the golden recipe for perfect governance, you would have to go to school for 3 years or 5 years or whatever, try to learn that, and then you have to go top down to all your team so that they understand this governance, so that it works. And here you have a way of formalizing it so that people kind of go along with it, as opposed to the need to actually understanding it. And you cannot have human bugs in the sense that they misunderstanding of what the agreements in the organization is. And I mean, at the end, what you were talking about, ephemeral DAOs, it's true that you can start a project saying, we just need a project, here's a few people, they have access to these funds and they have access to these things to do ABC, and then once the project is done, the DAO just like dissolves and then there's nothing less to be done. Or as Illia was saying, can you imagine agreements between DAOs and between protocols to have also special deals? Can you imagine that you have different protocols that say like, okay, let's do a win-win situation where we lower the fees for each other and create a new product together, and do it on a protocol level, so you don't need to trust the other team, you just deploy it and then it works. And that's I think something that will bring a lot of innovation, and because you don't need to trust, you can just move forward and make it happen.
By the way, we have 1 minute left talking about many DAOs and DAO mesh. I would like to make an announcement. We have more than 100 million NEAR tokens, which is $300 million in our community fund. And if you want to build 1,000 DAOs, apply to community+DAO@near.org. We'll drop the email. Just tell us what crazy DAO stuff you want to build, and then we'll be happy to support you. Illia, any 20-second efficient last words?
Check out Sputnik DAO as well, and launch your DAO today.
yes, Sputnik.fund, YOLO. So that was our panel. We finished in time, and you guys see these like links on this side or this side. You can claim them and get some NFTs of Sputnik DAO's logo. that's a special thing for everyone here.
Awesome.
Thank
NFTs
you.
are great. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Great panel.